Welcome, everyone, to Autism Spectrum Disorders, a path to hope, clarity, and progress. Whether you're just starting this path or if you've been walking it for years, we know it can be overwhelming, beautiful, uncertain, and full of possibility, often all in the very same moment. Today, we want to offer you encouragement, perspective, and some practical ideas. And I'm honored to welcome our guest, my very dear friend, Kristin Selby Gonzalez, president of Autism Hope Alliance. Kristin is a global advocate, speaker, and leader in the autism community, and the devoted mom to her son, Jaxson, who at 23 is on the autism spectrum. Kristin's personal journey, combined with nearly 2 decades of helping other families navigate their own, gives her a really unique and relatable, compassionate, and an insightful voice. Today, Kristin will share what she wishes she had known when Jaxson was first diagnosed, what she's learned from experts and experience, and how families can find more peace, progress, and connection. Kristin, welcome.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here and just honored to be having this conversation.
Yeah, I have learned so much over the years. We've shared a friendship. We've worked together at Autism Hope Alliance, and I've just, watched you grow along with Jaxson, along this journey, and it's been exciting to watch. And your unwavering commitment to Jax and to other families is always left a indelible impression on me. So I'm excited to jump into the conversation. So I want to get started, and we're going to have some themes that we're going to touch on today. And I really want to begin with some insights from your lived experience and the experts that you've worked with all around the world. So for those that are meeting you for the first time, Kristin, can you tell us a little bit about Jaxson and how your journey with him has shaped your life and your career?
So Jaxson, as you said, he's 23 years old. He was diagnosed when he was 2 years, 4 months. However, we knew something was happening. He lost his language and his eye contact around 15 months. But like many of you, he was, your kiddos, they were developing, talking and looking, just, hitting their milestones like all of the kids normally do. And then one day, we didn't see him look anymore. We didn't see him talk, and we kept going to these specialists, and they at that time, 23, almost 22 years ago, I guess, it was different than it is today. So you would go to a specialist and they didn't know a lot about autism. They would tell us that, oh, he had a speech delay, or he was an only child, or maybe there was a hearing issue. And so we would go through that whole little cycle. And finally, from 15 months to 2 years, 4 months, he finally got that diagnosis. And that's really where our journey began. And I remember getting online, and the first thing I did was Google. Well, actually, it wasn't Google. I think it was Yahoo at that time. I think my son's diagnosis was before Google. Like, that's crazy to think about, right? But I would get online, and I was searching for anybody to tell me anything. And I was just looking for that word hope. And I started to find the word hope when it came to diet. And that was the first thing that we jumped into. And because that was something I didn't need to be on a waiting list for. I was his mom. I was the one going to the grocery store. I didn't have to wait for anybody to tell me what to buy. And so we started to go on that journey, and little by little, meeting different therapists and different programs, meeting Advanced Brain Technologies. Not soon, soon after actually his diagnosis, we started at TLP. And but where he is today, from where he started, they told us he was never going to look, he was never going to talk, that he was going to be in a group home by the time he was 8, that the best thing that we could do is get him to use a spoon and fork and potty train, because that was pretty much what they thought was the limit for most of our kiddos back then. And today, yes, he's looking, he has limited language, but he understands everything. And that to me is just huge. His eye contact, we don't have any issues with that whatsoever. He rides a bike, he surfs, he swims, he rides horses. We're teaching him how to drive a golf cart, because that's our car for the moment in our neighborhood. So for us, yes, like, do we want him to keep going? Absolutely. But from what they told us he was going to be capable of for what he's doing today, it's just huge. And he's the one who picked my job. If you would have asked me 25 years ago, would I be in autism? I'd be like, first of all, I'd probably say, what's autism? I probably would have had very little idea of what autism was. I'd heard of it, but I didn't know much more. And I couldn't imagine. And so every time I look at my son, every time we help a family somewhere, or, through the Autism Hope Alliance, or a new partner signs up through the Autism Hope Alliance, I look at my son and I know that it's because of him of where I'm sitting there. I'm doing what I'm doing because of him. So really, I don't take credit for it. It's really, I'm an extension of what I feel like I'm supposed to do because of his energy through me, if we can help somebody else. And if we help one person, and we've said this, and you know this, Alex, I've said this for years, if we help one person, then it's all worth it. And so that's where my journey began, and that's where we are today.
You know, I think about, you're raising Jaxson, the work that you're doing here in the field, choosing to go into the work as a professional. You came from real estate, right?
Mhm,
And you had a strong business background.
mhm.
How do you make that choice? What was that moment where you knew you were going to work in this field? Where were you in Jackson's journey? How old was he? And why Autism Hope Alliance?
So Jaxson was probably 3.5, almost 4. And I just kept getting invited to different either nonprofits or organizations. And because I was going out and I would read a book, and this is how it really started. I would read a book about something to help my kiddo. I
Yeah.
would call up the person that wrote the book. Because I was in real estate and mortgage was doing so great, I refinanced our house and I took out a ton of money, and I didn't care,
Yeah.
because to me, I needed to make sure to help my kid. I would call the whoever it was, whatever therapy, whatever it was, and I would call and I'd say, okay, hi, I don't want to be on a waiting list. How much is it going to cost me to learn what you're trying to tell me here? And I would get on an airplane and I would fly and I would go to all these different places. And at that moment, it was never about helping other people. It was literally only about trying to help my son. And before I knew it, these different organizations were calling me up, or the specialists were calling me up asking me, hey, can we have you on our stage to just do a little interview with, or could we like have you give some type of inspiration to families? And so that's kind of where that started. And then I came across another company, and it was digestion, and it was helping my kiddo. I broke into this conference that was about, it wasn't open to the public. It was 55,000 people that year were there. They had scanner badge things. You couldn't even get in. And I talked my way in. And if you know me, you know that's something I would do. And
Yeah.
I talked my way in, and I did not have a badge, and you couldn't buy a badge. And I stood behind that company's booth and I was asked, and they didn't know who I was. Like, I called them, they didn't call me back when I wanted to go. And people started handing me orders, and like I just started taking orders and I didn't even know what was happening. And like 2 hours later, somebody taps me on the shoulder. They're like, "Are you that mom that called?" I was like, "Yeah, I am." They're like, "Can we talk to you outside?" I was like, "Oh my goodness, they're kicking me out of this place. How embarrassing." And they took me outside. They said, "Are you looking for a job?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And they said, "Will you come back tomorrow to meet our president?" I said, "I don't think I can get back in without a badge." So they went and bought me a badge. I found out years later, $475 they had to pay for their badge because they were at their allotment. They didn't know me from anyone. And so I showed up the next day, talked to their president. He's like, "We don't know what to do with you, but will you go home and write your dream job proposal?" Well, at that time, that was in 2008, the mortgage industry was tanking, starting to go down. We were seeing a crash happening. I had a brief opportunity to sell my company, and I did. And so I went on, and he said, let's help families. And so that's kind of where that started. And then before we knew it, we were getting other companies involved. And that's where by December, that happened March of 2008. And by December of 2008, the Autism Hope Alliance was born.
Yeah. Over, around, and through. You never take no for an answer. That's one thing I've for sure been inspired, by you, Kristin. And, you have been, I think, fearless where one can have an immense amount of fear. And, perhaps that fear is there in you, but you've always kind of overcome it and moved past it. And it can be intimidating for a parent to cold call practitioners, therapists, world experts, companies to get help for their kid. As you've reached out to all of these people, what's kind of the most powerful insights that you've gained or the greatest learnings? And, maybe you could, share a couple of specific examples with some of the experts that have supported you and Jax over the years.
Well, the one thing when I think about that question is honestly, the experts out there, they chose this profession, right? As parents, we didn't choose this, it chose us. The professionals, they chose that. And it's something that, especially if you meet the good ones, right? Like, and I've been lucky enough to meet 99% of the good ones. And every single one of them have hope. And they're never stopping. It's not like, oh, you're a great example, Alex. You don't stop at TLP. You go on to the next thing and you make it better and better and better. So it's like, just because they started here and we thought it was amazing, all of a sudden, like, they go another level, because they want us to have the best of the best. So when technology happens or science proves something or a study happens, regardless if it's a doctor or a therapist or whatnot, a lot of these professionals, they're not stopping here. The sky's the limit. They want to see our kiddos get better and better and better. And for those that are listening or watching, when I say better or better, because I know that could be a controversial word, right? I'm talking about kiddos that if you're not looking and you're not talking and you're not, being independent, all of us want that for our kiddos at any age. So I think it's always okay to say we want the best. And if you have a neurotypical kid, the same thing for your neurotypical kid. You want your neurotypical kid to be the best of the best. That's why they go on to college and they go on or trade school or whatever to get to that next level. Why can't we want that too? So when I say better and better, I want my kiddo to be able to cook on his own. I want him to be able to be at the house by himself. I want him to have a job one day. I would love it if, we figured out new technologies and new tools that, his brain can function in an easier way than it is now. And so when I look at these professionals, that is the one thing I've taken away from all of the top ones, is that they are never giving up on our kiddos. They are always looking for the next thing, the next cutting edge thing, and trying to see what they can offer us at any age for our kiddos.
Yeah, you have had an uncanny ability to filter through and find incredible practitioners in the field, Kristin. I know you've helped them so much because you've been willing to try anything that made sense
Mhm.
and was safe for
Yeah.
Jaxson. You know, are there any modalities or approaches, and you don't need to name them, but is there anything that you did that you regret, or has everything been part of the learnings on the journey?
There's two things that come to my mind, and I can name them without naming the companies, right? So
Yeah.
one early on, and this one always makes me giggle. And I think it was like $49, but back then, $49, that was like, seemed like a lot because I just got the diagnosis and I'm like $49 and I didn't know what I was doing. And it was this mud that you had to buy. And actually it ended up being way more than $49 because the plumber had to come. But there's mud you were supposed to put in this bath and it was supposed to like help detox something, right? I had no idea. I had read about it. Some mom was talking about it. I think it cost us a couple $1,000s by the time we were done because it got stuck in the pipes and it hardened and the plumber had to come. We had to like replumb part of our house. It was insane. So 100% first thought when you say regret, that mud, if I could go back and not pay $49 for that mud, I would not have. I don't know what it did. It hardened in my pipes. So there's that. The second one I remember actually driving with my son to a company. I don't think this company's around. I don't even remember the name of it, but I drove with my son from California to New Mexico to go to this company that did something with sound health. And I'll be nice to call it sound health because I don't actually think it was sound health. But you would have to, I remember them putting him on this like the swing thing and it was like going like this. They had all these lights going out at him. They had this horrible, horrible sounding music that freaked him out to put headphones on. And I was there for, I want to say 10 plus days. And I was the crazy mom that brought a playroom with her. Like I had the hotel completely clear out my hotel room. I brought a trampoline in the back of my car. Like I'm like, I look back and I'm like, what was I doing? But it made sense at the time, right? I remember we had to go home with this like light box thing, and it was like throwing lights at him, and I had to like sit in a bath. I mean, it was insane. And it cost thousands of dollars. And what made me do it? Some mom must have told me about it. And I highly regret that was probably one of the more expensive things that I had done. That if I could go back in time, I'd be like, no, don't throw your money at that. And definitely not the mud. If you guys see mud, please, nobody with mud that sells mud sue me or anything, but be very careful on your pipes. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I mean there are a lot of claims out there, and I think today there is so much more information and disinformation, Kristin, that's out there. So I think about this, 2-decade journey that you've been on, which I know many that are with us today have, been in this journey as long as you or longer, and some that are just beginning. So, if we're talking to parents that are starting this journey now,
Mhm.
and they're asking, where do I even begin? What's your advice?
For me, and again, it could be a debate, but I'm a big believer in diet. So I would say start off on a gluten-free, dairy-free diet. That to me is a foundation. And then you start looking at different things like sugars and food additives and food coloring and potentially some other stuff. But for me, that's like when I think of a kindergarten or preschool level, the foundation is going to be gluten-free, dairy-free. And what you're so lucky on today, you're so lucky. Oh my gosh, 20 years ago, you couldn't find anything. Today, I mean, you can go to restaurants that are dedicated to that. And so and it tastes good. It's not like I remember making my first waffle that was gluten-free, dairy-free. And I swear I've said this if you've heard me in the past. I think that waffle cost me $100 because of all the different products I had to do. And then it was literally like concrete. And I broke so many waffle makers. And so you don't have to worry about that today. So looking back, I'm like, gosh, you guys have it easy today. You really, really do. So that to me would be the first thing that I would consider. And it's not, and when I say that too, it's not like being on like Weight Watchers, right? So it's like, I don't even know if Weight Watchers is still around, but like where it's like the point system, it's not like, oh, I'm gonna cheat on Saturdays and Sundays, or they're going to grandma and grandpa's so they can have just one cupcake. No, when you're saying take away gluten and dairy, that's you take it away and you really try that with no cheating. And some people say 90 days. I'm a big believer on 6 months, unless I'm going to really see what's going to happen. And you might not, I'm not saying it's going to be like this perfect end all be all, but you might see the behaviors and the eye contact and the therapies that you are trying to do that you're going to like, whether it be speech or OT or ABA or play therapy or TLP, you might see some of those then start to be able to do better because your kiddo is feeling better.
So you're really talking about getting rid of neuroinflammatory foods and gut inflammatory foods
Mhm.
and creating that opportunity for other things to also work, right? So it's really the building blocks that we're working with. What you mentioned, it is a lot easier to do gluten dairy free now, and I'm glad that you shared you need to be 100% because it's difficult. Do you have any kind of tips to help families transition into that or resources that they can look to, including at Autism Hope Alliance, that might be helpful?
Yes. So first of all, I think it's easy for the whole family to like, again, and I'll tell you some tips and tricks that we've done at home, especially in the beginning. And as you're learning, I would have the whole family be gluten-free, dairy-free. Now, let's say you guys are going out and the kiddo's not with you and you guys don't want to be gluten-free, dairy-free. That's your opportunity to, maybe have something else without the kiddo having to see it, because I feel it's not fair where you're like, oh, this is yours, but this is ours, and this is good, but ours is better, because that's kind of what I feel like you're saying. And that's what a lot of the families have dealt with and the feedback I've gotten. I think that going into a market today, it's pretty simple. There are so many different brands that are, gluten-free, dairy-free, even when it comes to your milks. I mean, if any of you guys want to find AHA on Instagram and you want to message and ask me to give you some ideas for brands, I'm more than happy to give you a whole list of, dairy-free milks and dairy-free cheeses that are also gluten-free, and flours that are really easy to bake with. And honestly, if you stay in the produce section in the meat department, you're pretty much gluten-free, dairy-free for the most part in those sections, right? So it's really just going inside the middle of the grocery stores is where you're really going to have some issues. But if you go to the Autism Hope Alliance and you look at some of our partners, we have partners that are crackers that are gluten-free, dairy-free. We have flours that are gluten-free, dairy-free. And, those are brands that, for the most part, those are brands I found because that's what we're using. And so that to me is simple. And again, just even able to find like kid-friendly foods. Today you can. It's not that difficult to find a waffle. It's not that difficult to find a chip or a cracker or even a cookie. The one thing I would suggest is look at the ingredients though, because you might find some of those that have some high sugars, and that is something that I get a little bit worried about. We don't give our son sugar, but I know some of the kiddos end up doing okay on a lower, sugar. So I hate to take everything away at first. So if your kiddo's doing okay on a little bit of that, just be mindful of that, right? So when you're looking at wholesome food, you're thinking of your fruits, your vegetables, and again, even of fruits, you want to be careful on that at the high sugars, right? So there's a lot of common sense to it. And I know common sense is a word that a lot of us don't know how to define anymore. But I feel like when you're looking at it, go, okay, well, gosh, if I'm going to give fruits, maybe I don't give 13 bananas in a day, right? Those are the things I'm saying. Like, I've given a banana or I've given an orange, or maybe I'm going to look at my zucchinis and my squashes, and maybe when you're looking at your meats, look at grass-fed. Again, it comes down to what you guys can afford, but I'm always a believer, if you can't do organic, as long as I get you in that produce section, in that meat department, that's going to be far better than so many other things out there.
Yeah, whole foods.
Mhm.
So I know how crucial, diet has been for Jax. What other things, you've tried a lot of things over the years, Kristin, and what is stuck? If you think over these 2 decades, what did you introduce as an approach to help support Jaxson living his best life that's still part of the rhythm of your family and Jax's daily routine?
So, finding a good doctor. If you guys have heard of biomedical doctors, if you don't know what a biomedical doctor is, look at medmaps.org. That is doctors out there that are specializing in taking it but that's next step to trying to educate themselves on new protocols, new scientific studies, and really just having a really good understanding of autism. It's not just like your traditional doctor that might have had a few chapters on it in med school. These are doctors that are dedicating their lives to kiddos like ours. So I'm a big believer in that. That has stuck. We see our biomedical doctors, and we are in constant contact with them throughout the year, right? To me, that's huge. Uh, TLP, I was thinking about this before this call. Um, Mandy had asked me, what year did you start? And I was like, I think 2005, which like that's when my brain
Yeah.
is telling me. So that has stuck. And it was funny because the other day, he's with his therapist in our home, and I went out and he has, his headphones on, and I'm like, oh, didn't you guys already do your program today? They're like, because he loves it. Oh yeah, we're just listening to sound health. And it was like, it cracks me up because it's like we have Alexas and all these other things now, and he could listen to classical music. No, he wants to listen to it through his headphones, and it calms him down. And they were sitting there doing a puzzle, and so that's exciting to be able to see. And then I feel like for us, we've learned a lot through different modalities of play therapies, and so we do some ABA now, but more in a play therapy way, right?
Mm.
And so for me, it's, all about attitude. And it's not something I have to try at. It's just how we live our lives. And it's not something you practice at. It's just who you become. And, it's the attitude of knowing that, okay, he might not be here right now, but that doesn't mean that I don't want him there still. Or maybe it's not going to be something he's going to do right now, but maybe by next week we can do it, right? Or next month. It's one of those things where you just never give up and you just keep trying. So that stuck with me is my attitude, my own mindset of like, I'm not going to let go of what I want, but at the same time, I'm going to be patient until we get there.
I think mindset is huge, Kristen. And I mean, you fully give. I mean, you've dedicated your life to Jax and your work at AHA. How are you showing up for yourself? How important do you see self-care?
Mhm.
Is you're, talking to, moms and dads and guardians of kiddos. How important is self-care and what are you finding is working for you?
Well, self-care is huge. I will be honest with you guys, everyone listening, knowing me, I am really good at telling you what you should do. That does not mean I'm always good at taking my own advice, right? And so I would say this last year, especially maybe year and a half, I have gone on this journey of self-care and really taking my own advice. I am 48 years old. I'm not embarrassed to say how old I am. I know a lot of us women we're not supposed to say. It's like, why not? I'm proud of my 48 years. I think it's fantastic, right? I have a 23-year-old. How old do you think I'm going to be? I'm not 30, clearly, right? So, but I'm going through this new thing called perimenopause, which is super fun. And so these moms out there that are listening, you don't have a choice, really. Either you're going to end up going through perimenopause and it's going to suck, or you're going to go through perimenopause and you're going to learn how to take care of yourself. So I started working with a doctor helping me with my hormones and trying to figure this out. For the last 5 years, I would say my weight has been going like this, meaning this roller coaster ride.
Mm.
And I couldn't figure it out. I'm doing Orange Theory. I was, eating well. I knew all about diet. I have been gluten-free for 10 years. And when I say gluten-free, I do not cheat. Like I am gluten-free 10 years. Prior to that, I was gluten-free at home and eating gluten when I would go out. And then my body just wasn't feeling good with it. Right. And so suddenly about a year and a half ago, I was like, this isn't working. Whatever's going on. So I started finding a doctor that understood women's health, that understood hormones. And I lost 52 pounds this last year and a half. And
What?
yeah, I did.
You never had 52 to lose.
I did.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it was, you only see me from here up. Like, yeah. So like, like, so I got back into my high school jeans, which was really exciting for me.
Wow.
And but again, it was little by little, and it was trying to get that inflammation out of my own body. And I was doing the wrong exercises. For me, a hit therapy or hit, training was too much. My cortisol levels were too high. I started doing weight resistance, weight training, getting my protein up. I do a 30, 30, 30, 30 grams of protein for breakfast, 30 grams of protein for lunch, 30 grams of protein for dinner. I get 77 ounces of water in a day. And so my doctor had said 70, but I like the number 7. So for me, it's that mindset. So I was like, well, I might as well do 7, 7. That sounds more fun. And so, I'm not perfect by any means every day. I took out alcohol for over a year. My doctor tricked me though. She had said, oh, try it for 90 days, no alcohol, because it's going to cause inflammation in the body. And then after 90 days, well, let's try another 90 days. I'm like, hey, that's not. So then I really became mindset. Okay, can I make it a year? And I can say proudly, I'm not an alcoholic. So that worked out really great in my favor. But I do allow myself a glass of wine or a skinny margarita from time to time now, because I do think it's about moderation. Again, not promoting alcohol. I'm just saying moderation and like trying to figure out where that balance is. And I feel the best I have felt in my own skin since high school.
Wow, that's amazing. And we've not seen each other for a few years, so I'm
Yeah.
excited to kind of get together and do some catch up and witness this amazing transformation. And I can see it. You've got a glow about you, and given everything on your plate, that's not easy. So clearly, what you're doing is working.
Well, I
And,
need to
and
be
I,
here till I'm 102. That's what I told my son. I'm going to be
hey,
102.
you
He's going to
too.
be 77, and we'll both live in the old fogey home. Again, not being rude to any old fogies out there, but let's, I don't know what's politically correct anymore, what you're allowed to say, but y'all know what I'm trying to say.
I love it. Kristin, what does a typical day in your and Jax's life look like together?
So,
Now Jax is 23, so just
mhm.
paint a picture for us.
So one of the things for me is learning to say no and having that balance for home and family and work, right? This because of you, and I love you. Typically, I don't even leave for the office until 11, but this was Alex asking me. So I said, of course, it's Alex. I love him. So I said, yes, I made an exception. There's always exceptions to the rule. However, what I normally do is I wake up in the morning. I'm usually up by 5, and Jackson's not awake yet. I get through a couple hours of emails. I get the house all situated. I get my workout in. And then Jaxson wakes up around 8:30ish. And then I get to be mom and really focus on him and really encourage him and not rush him. I would say 3 to 4 days out of the week, we'll go do a run or a fast walk on the beach. We don't live very far from the beach. So for us, it's having that mom and son time of really just knowing that our day is going to be pretty busy, but those mornings are for about that's our time, right? Our therapist then comes at 11, and that's usually then when I'm headed off to the office. And our therapist is there from 11 to 7. And so I'll be at the office till about 5:30 or 6. I come home, and then I have that last hour to kind of check and make sure everything's going well. Get the house kind of getting ready to shut down. And and then that time between 7 and around 9:30 is, mine and Jackson's time to, you know, take showers, get ready for bed. We do spelling because that's one of the therapies we're doing right now, right? So it's one of the things that just kind of like not rush, 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 right? He then goes to sleep around 9:30. And then that's my time between 9:30 until about 11ish. Basically, that's my time to kind of get my brain knowing what I'm going to do the next day, get my list ready for that, and that's where we're at.
And that's super helpful. You mentioned Jackson's therapist coming. What's happening for Jackson during the days while you're at work?
Yeah, so from 11 to 7, he has his therapist. He has speech therapy that comes. He has ABA that comes, and ABA is really tailored for independent life skills, right?
Right.
He also, for us, exercise is a really important part of our life. So when Jackson turned 16, instead of buying him a car, we put a pool in our backyard. And because he didn't know how to swim, and I was really nervous of that. So we custom built the pool it goes from 3.5 to 5 feet. He wasn't even 5 foot tall, just so you know, when he was 16. Now he's 5'10" and a half. But so he could go tippy toes at the 5 feet level, and we were able to teach him how to swim. He's an amazing swimmer now. But part of his therapy is he has to do swim every day. So he's in the pool every day. But while we're in the pool, he's learning to read. He's doing math skills. We incorporate anything and everything into whatever his day is. He also has to help with laundry. He has to help with his cooking. He has to help with, he has to take a shower and know how to do that on his own. And with the kind of shadow of that therapist there, he has to get his bedroom, ready. He does take a nap throughout the day because he's epileptic, so his seizure meds make him a little bit tired. So he has a rest period for about 45 minutes throughout the day. And then he wakes up and therapists are doing the spelling. They are, again, anywhere we can put a life skill in there, that's what we're doing. So he has to help feed the dog. He has to go in the backyard and clean up. He has to learn how to vacuum. I mean, he knows how to do this stuff now, but even trying to help prep his meals, right? So we kind of get it prepped for him, so it becomes easy for him to grab that meal. So we have my mom actually helps out and preps his meals for the week. So then that way he can pick different ones he wants, almost like a meal plan. And then he can then prep those himself and heat those himself and get those ready for his breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
That is a great day spent. I love, the focus on, activities of daily living and life skills. So really, Jackson's days have looked very different over these years.
Yes,
Yeah,
very different.
yeah, yeah.
And we went through the aggression like a lot of families out there probably listening. It was a very scary time. Puberty, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. For a lot of us, sucks. And the hormones are changing. That's why it's so important to find a doctor that knows the chemistry of our kiddos. We found certain things that have helped. And again, if you message me privately, I'm happy to share some of those supplements or different things that we've done. But again, everybody's different, but the aggressions, and Alex, I mean, my arms were covered in bruises. I was crying, and this was going on for years. This wasn't going on for like a season. The
Yeah.
season for puberty lasted, I would say, about 5+ years. And that was probably the most challenging I've ever dealt with in my life. And I will say, once you get through that, and I know if you're going through it right now, I wish that upon nobody. Like, I get teary-eyed just thinking about it. I think I still have PTSD over it. But it's, again, working with people that know what they're doing is going to really be helpful too.
Yeah, I remember that period and
Yeah.
how hard and it was. I saw the bruises.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the impact and I just how did you persevere? I mean, that was years. And
Yeah.
Jax is strong.
He's
Uh,
very strong. I I prayed a lot. I did. And I try to remind myself that, let's say we had bad moments for 2 hours combined throughout a day, that there were still 22 other hours in that day. And I would literally hold on to everything that was positive. And I would just try to create our home the best I could. So if we couldn't have glass in our picture frames, then I literally went and got plexiglass, like the plastic, and I made those in there so I could still have our pictures up and I didn't have to worry about them being broken. I figured out ways to put things on the back of the doors and had a carpenter come and do that. So every time the door slammed, I wouldn't get another hole in the wall. And trust me, when I say we had holes in the walls, we did. When I had glass and blood, and it was a very, very, very scary time. And I don't think enough of us are talking about that, right? And because that is the reality of what a lot of us are going through. And so please know, if you're listening and get to your head thinking about this, you're not alone. There's a lot of us that have gone through it. There's a lot of us that are still going through it. And that is why it's important to find therapies that are calming. That's why it's important to find doctors that know what they're doing. And it's also important to find other parents that are going through it so you don't feel like you're completely alone, because you will. I felt alone a lot. And I cried a lot in the shower. That would be my time to cry. And I'm not going to lie, I think people now that they sugarcoat stuff, they don't tell the truth or they don't want to share it. It's not a Hallmark channel. Okay. Sometimes it's Lifetime. And so, like, I literally, and I give myself that permission to cry. I did. And I still do. There's not always easy days. There's days where I see us regress a little bit, and it makes me sad. And then I say, okay, what's different? Did he poop? That's another thing. Like, poop is a big deal. Did he poop well enough? Did he get enough sleep? Did something change? And so I'm always a detective, always.
yeah. Uh, you got through that difficult time. And it's hard to hold on to hope, but that's what gets you through.
Yeah.
What surprises you most about Jaxson today, now that you've come through that period? What's like the most amazing thing? What surprises you about what Jax is doing, something you never expected, just anything that is like, oh my gosh.
Honestly, and I feel bad as a mom saying this, I've underestimated him. He
Mm,
honestly, he understands so much more than he can express. And we have to always remember that it's fascinating to me to watch it, to be honest with you. Like, if you tell him, hey, Jaxson, we're going to leave in 10 minutes. You need to go brush your teeth, go get yourself dressed, go to the bathroom and get your coat and your shoes on, and I'll meet you at the door in 10 minutes. He can do that. And yet it wasn't that long ago that I would be like talking to him almost as though he's like this little teeny tiny kid, and he's not. He's a young adult. And so now he's taught me, and he continues to teach me. I'm really the student, he's the teacher. And, you know, there's something that now in our home that we are telling him, hey, if you need space, just say, hey, I need space. Get out of my face, mom, but in a nice way. I need space, right? And so that is what I've learned the most, is that I underestimated my own son. I always believed in him, but I didn't believe where he was at when he was there. And so to me, sometimes we get so caught up in the day-to-days and the schedules, and we don't take a moment to step back and go, whoa, Like the other day we were at my mom's house and this was so cool. Like I looked at my mom and I'm like, look at how cool this is. It was like not even that long ago, maybe a couple years ago, we all couldn't sit around. They have this, my mom's house has this beautiful backyard and this fire table by the pool. And none of us could all sit together, but Jaxson wouldn't allow. And we were all sitting there, all eating. And Jackson's sitting there like, and he has his, it's, you know, he sits with his legs crossed like I do, which is hilarious. And he's sitting there, he's eating. And then my mom brings out bingo and we're like literally playing bingo. He's never played bingo before. And he has a little dauber and he's playing bingo. And we're like doing a family game. And if anybody looking in, if you weren't looking at the language and all that stuff, if you were just getting to see the visual, we look like a normal family. And that to me is something I will never take for granted. And I will always be grateful for, because every little inch you take is another step in the way you want to go. And sometimes it's an inch forward and 2 inches backwards, and then 3 inches forward and 1 inch backwards. And our kiddos are really, you know, we're the turtles. We are not the hares. We are not the bunny rabbits going really fast. We are the turtles. But as long as we keep little by little going that way, and then as parents, we have to remind ourselves of the victories, and we have to remind ourselves where they were. Even opening up a present. My mom and I were talking about this the other day. Jaxson couldn't even open a present up. Like you would give him a present, it would just sit there. Now he gets so excited about presents. It's like hilarious. He likes to go on Amazon now, which I have to be super careful with.
Uh-oh.
Yes. And he literally will tell you, you know, what he wants on Amazon, you know? And so, and again, I'm excited about the world we live in today with the technology, because there are things that we can give them like Amazon, or they can order their own groceries, you know, through an app that gets delivered. That didn't happen 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. And so today, our kiddos that are in their 20s, they actually can learn independent skills with the technology that we have today that they didn't have as an opportunity back then.
Yeah, we have come so far.
Mhm.
Uh, for, a lot of parents, they may feel like they've tried everything and nothing's working. What do you say to them?
That you haven't tried everything, because not everything's been invented yet. And some,
Thank you.
yes. And so the other thing is that sometimes when you're seeing things not work, you need to take a step back, and maybe you're throwing too much at once, or you're not noticing the little inch by inch by inch. You're not noticing that they're eating dinner with you guys all because it's just happened. And but you're looking for this big thing, right? Like you're looking for, oh, I did this therapy, and aren't they supposed to be self-independent and doing this and this? Well, sometimes you have to do this to get to this, and it takes years. It doesn't take months. Yes, we all hear the hope stories and the amazing success stories where the kid took the Lucavera, and we've all heard this on the news recently, right? Which I giggle with because we've been on that for 20 years, and I'm a big believer in it, and I love Dr. Fry. However, like love him. But that's that one story that kid got lucky with whatever I call it the chocolate chip cookie recipe, right? Like he
Right.
got really lucky that was his recipe. It doesn't mean that doing this, and this isn't your recipe. You just might need a whole bunch more ingredients. And your cookie might be, what do they call that? The everything but the kitchen sink cookie, right? And
Right.
so it might not just be a simple chocolate chip cookie recipe. And so when you think you've done everything, you haven't. And I get so excited because there's so many, I get access to a lot of the stuff that many of you guys probably don't, just because of the world I'm in. And it's so exciting to see some of the studies and the doctors watching these studies and things that are helping things with Alzheimer's, or, other off-label stuff that we are seeing help with autism now. And, it might be another 7 years before we get to really try it. But I know studies that are out going on right now that are huge. So again, you haven't tried everything out because it hasn't come to you yet.
Outside, well, thank you. You're right. So much has shifted and our understanding gets better and better. And the science is working hard to catch up and help our kids advance forward, Kristin. Outside of Autism Hope Alliance, what are some other good resources you could recommend for families today to get credible information?
Well, I think that, medmaps.org, I think anytime that there's doctors that are really focusing on published studies and, scientific research behind that, I think is huge. So I really love MedMaps a lot. TLP, you guys have been doing this since before my son got diagnosed, so I think that's a huge one. I think looking at some of your local support groups that are really tailored to your school district or to your cities, because to sit there and say a national organization is going to be in your city, it's rare, right? And so I feel like really looking at other moms out there that might, especially if you're in school, really connecting with those other moms, especially moms that might have been in it a little bit longer than you, because they have really done a lot of the homework already and they learned from somebody else that did the homework, right? And they're just improving it. So I always say that's something really helpful. One thing I am seeing for some of the church groups out there, they are doing a lot with special needs right now. And anywhere that you can, this is something I messed up on. I wish I would have got my kid out in the community more. And when he was younger, and I didn't, and I can't go back in time. So anywhere that you can get your kiddo out in that community where they're accepting him, whether it be a church group, whether it be a parent support group, whether it be an after school program, whatever it is, I say you go for it, because you want as much exposure. And this is my opinion. Again, not a doctor, just a mom, but I'm an MD, mother determined. But yes, get your kiddo out there for every single person that is going to invite them. And if they don't invite them, and this is what I was thinking this morning, I will go to a hotel and I will call the hotel ahead of time and let them know we're coming. I will educate that hotel before we come. I will go to a grocery store and with my son sometimes, and I walk in and I'm like, hi, we have autism. We're practicing our social skills. I walk into a UPS. Hi, we have autism. We're practicing our social skills. I will not give any other person an opportunity but to be a cheerleader to my kiddo. So if you don't have the resources, then you create the resources and you create that community. Every time you walk in to a place, they're going to know your name and they're going to know your kiddo's name.
I love it. I love it. So, Kristin, one of the things you've used with Jaxson, all along has been the listening program. Why are you still using it? How has it impacted him, with his emotional regulation, maybe communication, social connection? Just why? Well, I mean, it's a long
Sure.
time.
Well, and I love you, Alex. So I would say it because of you, but really it's because of him. He's the one that chose it. He's the one that, wants to keep doing it. If he didn't want to keep doing it, we wouldn't be doing it still. And so I listened to him. Like I said, he is really my teacher. When I look at the listening program, and, I've had many questions asked from a lot of times from many families all over the world, and about the listening program. And this is something that's like no brainer to me. I try any therapies that are not going to hurt my son, that make sense, that aren't crazy expensive, and this makes a lot of sense. It's not going to hurt your kiddo. Again, I'm not a doctor, hasn't hurt my kiddo. It's something that has so much scientific research behind it. I guess because I'm lucky enough to know you, Alex, as well, that I know what you put into it on the back end. So, those that aren't lucky enough to know you, I'm going to tell you, this man like researches more than any other person I've ever met, and that's exciting. So I trust that he's a trusted source. The other thing is, it's when I look at my son, he was the kiddo. And if you've ever seen any of our other interviews from years ago, I could not get headphones on him when we first started. I remember in 2005, I still remember like yesterday sitting in this like learning area that you had there in Utah. And I remember looking at you going, there is no way I'm going to get headphones on this kid because of the experience we had with the other bad place. And you're like, just try, Kristin, just try. And again, I underestimated him because I put these headphones on, and I've said this before, it was like watching butter melt. Like he just was like, oh, like it was literally, and I'm not exaggerating, that's exactly what it was like. And from that day on, that's what he wanted. We started seeing his sensory regulation he started regulating almost himself. Like he knew when he wanted it. He still does. He will literally ask for it. It calms him down. It makes it to where other things can now open up for him, right? Because now he's not in that fight or flight mode. He is calm. So now we can introduce stuff to him in a totally different way. His communication. I mean, when I say my son had no language, he really had no language for a long time. And we counted every as a word, like no joke, because we were so excited for that, right? That was 26 words in my mind when he could do the alphabet. And, you know, his language has increased. He'll say words that I didn't even know he knew. And so it's exciting to see that. I feel like TLP is something, again, I'm not choosing. I'm really not. He's 23 years old. He can choose for himself. If there's a therapy that we were doing that he really did not want to do, unless it was a medical thing that we had to do,
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that conversation and sitting there. And yeah, he did kind of melt like butter. It
He
was
did.
awesome. It was a
Yeah.
great moment. And you've said it so many times, and I'm glad you keep repeating it, is that at times we underestimate our kids, what they're capable of, and we underestimate ourselves and
Mhm.
what we're capable of doing. And I think it's important to have hope, and you're such a hopeful individual and such a shining example, Kristin, you and Jax, of what's possible, right? And we don't know what's possible for our children. All we can do is do the very best we can to be informed and afford them opportunities to be their very best, whatever that might be. I think ultimately that's our responsibility as parents for our kids. And we have had so many amazing questions that came in when people were registering, but since we have been in this conversation, Kristin, so I want to kind of see if we can dial into some of these real quick. And, I want to pick some that maybe will be most applicable to the group. Some are pretty specific, and I get why you're asking all of the questions that are here. But this is a big one, I think, as we think about the future in young adulthood. What's your plan for Jaxson interacting with other young adults his age? What opportunities are being afforded Jaxson for his socialization as a young man?
So one of our helpers is actually on the spectrum. You would call him more higher functioning, and he is becoming Jackson's. Really, they're both so great for each other. They're like best friends, and so we bring him if we go on vacation. So Jaxson has a buddy, and he's a couple years older than Jaxson, and so trying to find those in your community. We've also worked with like different communities and with the churches and different things like that, and we've been able to offer different things like 13 and over proms, because so often, or just even seasonal functional, events that are 13 and over. Because one thing I noticed in my own community was they were having events for autism, but it was all ages. And a lot of our kiddos are very, very sensitive to younger kids. My son, his trigger is babies. So the last thing I want to do is put him in a group at this huge thing with little kids screaming all over the place. And so trying to find, communities that can offer that. And if they didn't, because they didn't offer it for us, we created it ourselves. We keep it small and simple, so you don't see me advertise a lot about it, because I don't want 100 people there. I want to keep it small for about 20. So again, if we are creating the community that our son needs.
I love that. A term has come up, a question's been asked that I'm not familiar with, and I'm just going to ask you, Kristin, have you heard of autism burnout?
Yes, I have. And so the burnout was usually from the parents are burned out because there's too much. We have too much being put into us. Our fight or flight, our systems are shot, man. And
Yeah.
so, I always say this: when you are at a crossroads, or you are feeling like you're at a wall, it could not even be a crossroads. You could feel like I've hit that brick wall. I got nothing left. My battery pack is negative, right? I always do this. This has worked for me every single time. So I would give this advice. Don't do anything for 3 days. Don't think about it.
Mm.
Don't do it. Just, I promise you, in 3 days, your kiddo still is going to have autism, right? The problems are still going to be there, but you're going to be able to see clearer. You're going to see what's working and what's not. Also, if you have so much going at you at once, like there's just too much information sometimes and you want to do everything because it all sounds great. And then that also is burnout because it's so overwhelming. Um, Again, don't think about anything for 3 days. And whatever that one thing is that pops in your mind, that's probably the thing that you should explore, right? That has worked for me. And I swear, every single time. So, and again, be easy on yourself, breathe, because that is my best advice to myself, because I did not do that all the time. I would literally, and I still don't do that all the time, I'm not going to lie. But breathe, because you are only as good to your kid as you are to yourself. So if you burn out and you have nothing left and you are crying in the corner by yourself in the middle of the night, or you're crying or screaming in your pillow, that is not going to be helpful for you to be able to make a clear choice decision. So sometimes it's okay to pause. It's okay to take that breath and say, okay, I don't know right now, and I might not know for 3 to 5 days, but I'm going to figure it out. And just give yourself that permission to take a break. You need to take that break.
That's beautiful. And it comes, that's the ultimate form of self-care,
Mhm.
giving yourself permission to rest. I think so often caregivers, don't understand they need to put on their oxygen mask first, and you need to, and and that's the same, with the whole family unit. So often, Jackson's an only child, but there are so many households, families where there's siblings of kids on the spectrum or multiple kids on the spectrum in the household. Just from that perspective, Kristin, do you have any advice or learnings from other families that you've worked with that
Yeah.
have siblings that are in the picture?
Yeah, some of the best things that I've seen for those that do have siblings is a couple of things. Um, an aunt or an uncle or a close family friend will notice that that sibling, because those siblings are truly an extra therapist. Those siblings aren't getting a traditional upbringing with brothers and sisters, because the kiddo with autism is, at the doctors, they're at a therapist, they're special diets. It's like a whole thing, right? So the siblings that are neurotypical typically are asked to kind of step up to the plate and almost kind of be older than they need to be, right? And often parents, they feel guilty, if this is what I've heard, and I can imagine it, because I feel guilty just even with my own dog. I can't do what I want with her sometimes, right? So I can only imagine if I had a kiddo and another kiddo, but they will tell me, we feel guilty, we don't know what to do. But what I've seen really work well is somebody else, an extended family member, an extended friend, will say a couple of things. If the kiddo with autism can be watched, meaning that another family member or an extended friend can watch that other child, that gives that parent the opportunity to have some one-on-one time with that sibling. I think that's really important if that's possible. If that's not possible, because I'm thinking of my son's aggression years, that was not possible, right? If that's not possible, I've also seen it where the extended family or friends will then invite the sibling out with them and do one-on-one time with them, or they might have their own kids and now they get to be part of that kind of traditional family unit. Even if it's just, going to the movies or going out to dinner or, going to an amusement park and having that dedicated time once a month. And I've seen that work beautifully. So I highly recommend, looking into something like that.
Oh, that's great. Kristin, what's your greatest hope for Jaxson today?
Well, I'm never giving up, right? So I get to your head, it must be early in the morning. This is my perimenopause. But like, but I really believe that the future is not here yet. I really believe that we don't have the answers that we're gonna have. And I hold on to that. I know that therapy, that's going to be the next thing that's going to be the cutting edge for Jaxson, whether it be a supplement, whether it be a medication, whether it be a therapy. I don't know yet. I just know that it's not here yet, but it's going to be here. And my biggest hope for my son is he is going to be self-independent. He is going to be able to live on his own. He's going to be able to have all the hopes and dreams that you and I have had. And so I am never giving up on that. And to get me to cry is very hard. So it must be this perimenopause, because I've done a lot of interviews and I don't typically cry anymore on this stuff. But I will never, ever, ever give up to know that we don't know what we don't know yet. We do not know enough about the human brain yet. And I am so excited for people like you that don't give up. I'm so excited for scientists out there that don't give up because I know it's coming. And I don't believe the window ever closes. I do not believe there is a magic age that, oh, no more hope. Are you joking me? There's people that in their 80s when I was younger that had strokes that basically they said there was no more hope after a stroke. And how many of us know somebody that's had a stroke in their 80s that you can't even tell they had a stroke? Why? Because some scientists didn't give up to learn how we could help them. So that is how I believe there is no magic age that this window is going to close. I don't care. I don't care if we're 45 and we find something out. I don't care if he's 77 and I'm 102 when we find something out. I just know that it's coming.
Kristin, thank you. This was wonderful. And I know many people are going to want to be in contact with you and follow your and Jackson's journey. So for those of you that want to, continue, this conversation through, witnessing what Kristin and Jaxson are doing, a really great resource is Autism Hope Alliance. They have incredible resources for families. So their website is autismhopealliance.org. And you can follow them on Instagram at autism_hope_alliance. To connect with our team at Advanced Brain Technologies, info@advancedbrain.com for email, advancedbrain.com for website, and you can phone us at country code 1-801-622-5676. And just as a, final thought is, we say goodbye to you, Kristin. Again, thank you so much for your time. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is just that quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I'll try again tomorrow. And I just really implore each of you and encourage you to stay courageous. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.